Good evening, everyone. We are now live streaming and recording. This is the Community Safety Wellness Task Force, the great city and county of Durham, North Carolina. It's a pleasure to be here with you. We are living in trying times. We are living in hopeful times. We are living in community, and that's why we can speak of hope. I'll just speak personally. That's how I can speak of hope, because I'm not in this alone. As I look across this Zoom window, Brady Bunch window of wonderful citizens, residents, fighters, advocates, teachers, parents, children. I mean, we've been through it. We've lived through a lot, and we're going to live through a lot more, and we're going to see a lot of victory along the way. If we didn't believe that, we wouldn't be here. That's my welcome. Turn it over to Marsha. I'm Xavier Case. I'm one of the co-chairs. Marsha is our other co-chair. It's your turn.
Thank you. Well, that was perfect because the value that I offer to us this evening is relationship. We just came from the youth art roundtable, and nothing happens if we're not with another. That we heal together, we hurt together, we hope together, but all things are possible as long as we can be in relationship. And that, to me, is the hub in the middle of this wheel of safety and wellness. And it's an honor and pleasure being with y'all tonight. And before I pass it back to you, Xavier, I'd just like to give a quick update on the open letter and the nice, wonderful visit that we had from DA DeBerry last task force meeting. And Muffin, let me know, fill in the blanks, but we have delivered, thanks to Muffin, we have delivered all the letters to all the officials. And we've gotten some responses, and our next steps are to meet with Public Defender Baxton, and again with DeBerry, DA DeBerry, and judges are calling us, and so we're off. And Muffin, what would you like to add to that, dear?
I don't know. I think you covered everything. Judges did reach out and let me know that they did receive the letters today, and some of them said their friends were like, "Oh, people can just write judges." It's like, yeah, they can. It's like, just don't. But actually, anyone can do it. It's just people they don't know they can do it, or they're fearful of doing it. But the judges, they like to know what people who voted them in are thinking of what they're doing. So yeah, they can't speak about individual cases, but things that impact everyone, they can definitely listen and have an idea of what can be done about it.
Beautiful. Yeah, amen. And I want to thank everybody for their consideration of this appeal and for their support. It's just one of the greatest parts of being a part on this task force with everyone is also being a part of a greater movement in North Carolina of what I call the justice of love. So, Mike, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I looked the other day at the letter and lost count of all the signatures. Do you guys know how many signatures are on there now, individuals and groups? And I'm hoping, since it's a live letter, we can continue to encourage people to sign, right?
Absolutely. And I think last count was 372, something like that. And signatures continue to please keep circulating, and we'll be in touch with everyone as well. So thanks. And to that, I'll pass it back to Xavier.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is just some updates for roundtables, and we have two basic questions that we wanted you to address or enlighten us on. What critical issues are you currently working on as a roundtable. And then what challenges are you facing / what support is needed to help overcome those challenges? So what's your main issues that you're working on right now as a roundtable? And then what challenges are you facing and how can we possibly support you? And I did put a little cue of that in the chat with criminal justice system, then SRO, then violence interruption de-escalation. I'll have SRO twice. That's how large this group is, right? The fourth one would be the crisis response. Forgive me. I was typing on the fly. So SRO is 2, crisis response is 4. Criminal justice system, you're up.
I can start since I'm in the midst of trying to write a draft of our final report. So I've been doing exactly this. And the agenda for our tomorrow's meeting. So we've got some proposals that are in development and sort of on hold, waiting further feedback. The most developed of those is a packet of proposals relating to abuse, neglect, and dependency court and the child welfare system. We're very much building on the work that Toya, Thrive Tribe, and Emancipate NC did. We are awaiting results of a questionnaire, online questionnaire that we developed that Rose helped us get over the finish line to former A&D parents and former kids. So when we get those results back, that'll be able to add some more rationale to the proposals. We are also awaiting, I've been nudging the interim DSS director, the director of child services at DSS, and the District 14 guardian ad litem, and the IDS, Indigent Defense Services, the state parent defender's office to consult with this. The IDS office says, oh yeah, we'd love to talk with you about these proposals. We're aware of them, but they haven't gotten back to us about how and when that'll happen. And I've yet to get a reply. Although actually I did just yesterday get a reply from a District 14 guardian ad litem. It's like, yeah, we'd love to talk with you guys about these proposals and help develop them. So that's awaiting that. We've got a proposal, an ever-evolving proposal about magistrates' assistance, as in having people there at the magistrate court, or better yet, having a public defender present. That's a pretty big alteration, that second part than when we originally ran that by the chief magistrate and Don Baxton. We're wisely waiting to bring it back to public defender Baxton until Muffin and Marcia have been able to meet with her on this jail issue. So that's awaiting further. We have ending cash bail is certainly a key thing that we're working on, and we don't necessarily have a sort of proposal about it, but we've gotten a lot of, we've been pushing that and gotten some good responses from DA DeBerry and others. So that's certainly a topic that we'll be able to discuss in our final report, in what form it'll take and what kind of endorsement we'll want the task force to help us with that. We'll see in the coming weeks and months. We are, Marcia and I have begun the process of taking on the topic of domestic violence, sexual assault, the system of care for that. So we'll be coming back to Muffin and Toya and the other roundtable members with the what next steps for that once we've done a little initial inquiry and people willing to talk to us. We did that because it's a key topic, and Wendy Jacobs apparently at that joint city county working session that Marcia and Xavier were called to before, she's specific. So what are you guys doing to work on this topic? So that we took that as this is a topic we should work on, and at least have a kind of outlines of a proposal relating to that. We've already had presented and had approved our set of proposals relating to survivor care, the prescriptions of repair pilot, which is underway, and the larger Office of Survivor Care proposals that will definitely be part of our final report. And there will be a number of kind of bullet points, sort of passing the baton kind of items related to other topics like expanding pre-arrest diversion, post-arrest diversion, maybe creating a DUI court, things like that we won't have the time or bandwidth to develop into concrete proposals, but will be part of our final report that we hope the task force will endorse telling others to run with it. Others being the county, probably most relevantly, the county commission is the funder of some of these agencies, and also the administrative office of the courts. Muffin, Marcia, did I skip anything?
You're good. Thanks. Appreciate it.
So for our area, we're looking at to decrease the impact of trauma that increases the risk of violence and victimization. And you'll hear more about that with the ethnodrama proposal that we're presenting for a second read tonight. I was asked to be co-chair of the North Carolina State Health Improvement Services project initiative, and specifically the chair on ACEs. So they're working on ACEs and we're working on ACEs, and we'll find some synergies there, which I'm really excited about. Next would be looking at Handle with Care, which is a process where children that have experienced violence or seen violence, come in contact with violence, and then go to school and act out based on that experience, that traumatic experience. Handle with Care says, well, we're going to make sure that everyone in the chain of events, whether it's home, school bus drivers, going into the school, understands that these children have experienced violence in some way. And Handle with Care is simply what that is. It means that there's extra attention that's paid to those children. And the idea is to have a link between what's happened in the community through a community health worker that interacts with the children in the school, family and children support in that way. So that's what I have. Marcia, I don't know if Samuel is here, but Marcia, do you have anything?
No, thank you. Yes, Samuel sends his regards to everyone and his regrets that he's not able to be with us tonight. Thanks. Thanks, Wanda.
Sorry, I got a new computer, y'all, with a touch screen, so it's being a little special. Good evening. Nori and I are sharing updates on behalf of the SRO Roundtable. We'll be brief. We have been working with our research assistants to finish up analysis of our data. We had several listening sessions and have been doing our best to work with them to make sure we can have an accurate process for processing all of the data. So we'll have our roundtable meeting next week to get feedback from our research advisors, research assistants about their process, and hopefully from there be in a position to start to talk through what we're seeing as recommendations from our roundtable. It might be a bit, what's the word I want to use? Hopefully we're not overconfident in being able to prepare for our first proposal in February. I know that we wanted to finish the proposals in the winter, ideally, so that by the spring we'd have time to really be engaging community members and get feedback on what we are suggesting as a group, as a complete whole. But we'll see. We're doing our best to just kind of trust the process and stay true to what everyone's needs are, just operating sustainably, because it's winter and it's important to rest. But this work is really important too. So we're moving, I feel like we're moving at a slower pace, but we're still moving in the right direction, and that's what matters. I don't think we need any particular support. I just continue to offer thanks for everyone that worked to see us hire our research assistants. And I'm grateful for Rose, Jaquel, and Amaja and the work that they're doing. That's my 2 cents. Nori, you want to add anything?
Nothing really, just other than sort of your sentiments around everyone who's helped us hire them, and especially to our research assistants who are helping us through this process. Because we couldn't certainly do it without them. And so just feeling grateful for that, and really looking forward to like the recommendations being put together. And yeah, thank you, Jesse.
That's us.
Crisis response?
I can share on our behalf, and I hope Isaac and Shanice and Xavier will chime in if I miss anything. And Jennifer is teaching, but said that she might hop on if she's able to slip away. I'm speaking up on behalf of the Crisis Response Roundtable, and our focus over the last couple months has really been listening to the Community Safety Department to learn about how the first 6 months of the HEART pilot has been going, or HEART pilots, plural. We've been figuring out how to make sense of what we've learned so far and what other questions we have that we want to return to them with. And we've been talking about other potential proposals to work into our final report from our task force. Some of the ideas that have been rumbling are what kind of reflection might be possible around the sheriff's office's work, reflections on their calls for service, the idea of a drop-in or day center, a respite center, conversations around an affordable housing solution, feeling like we're hearing over and over again from people who are tasked with crisis response that there are people who are experiencing what's being filed away as crisis, but is actually like it's an issue of life needs being neglected by our system in a ongoing kind of way, and trying to figure out how to see what our first responders are identifying as chronic patterns and figure out how to bring together city council, county commissioners, and school board to tackle those issues using our public resources. We too have been feeling the intensity of the pace, and want to echo what we heard from the SRO roundtable around slowing down. We were considering bringing a proposal in the next meeting to add 6 months to our overall time together as a task force. And rather than having that mean that we add a lot more to our plates, having that mean that we slow down to have the conversations we're hoping to have at a pace that feels more sustainable. And we've been studying some of the other offerings that exist in other places, drop-in center models like in other cities, and we can share more detail if people are interested in hearing what's emerging through our research. Anything I missed? Roundtable. Thank you. And I'll share the bylaws in the chat to highlight the piece about being a 24-month task force that has the option of adding 6 months on.
I think it's the Youth Roundtable now.
That's you.
Yeah, okay. So the Youth Roundtable has decided to focus on restorative practices and restorative justice as it pertains to youth. For now, we've been looking at restorative practices in schools, mostly focusing on Durham public schools. We've invited 2 guests now to come to our meetings and to share about their work and what restorative practices looks like in their professions, but also just in Durham. So I think because we started later than the other roundtables, kind of in the research part of the roundtable. And we're just trying to collect as much information and stories as possible before we decide on like any type of recommendation. We just want to know kind of what's out there, make sure we're all on the same page about what restorative practices are, as opposed to like restorative justice, and what that can look like for youth. I think we just need more time like everyone else.
Thank you, all the roundtables, for kind of getting us caught up to what you've been doing. You are volunteers at the highest level, highest order, and your work is very much appreciated. Marsha, anything else on roundtables updates before we move on? No?
No,
Okay.
no, can't think of, thank you.
Okay. So we will move on to a discussion about the final report and how that might look just from a format standpoint. Before we go to that, I do want to acknowledge the presence of one of our liaisons, City Council Member Caballero. Thanks for being here as always, and really appreciate your support and your counsel towards us and looking out for your city the way that you do. Appreciate you. So I'm going to share my screen now. This won't take long. It's pretty straightforward, hopefully. This is a suggested outline for a final report. I had talked with Marsha and Dwayne about it. When we sent out the agenda, Dr. Mike Systrom emailed us with some ideas. So I called him up and Monday, and we had a little more time to think a little more deeply about it. What we want this final report to do is to inspire our community to action. That's kind of how I'm feeling about it, that this report would not just be information for our community, but a way that we can inspire our community to action. We mentioned this, I hear Jesse saying this all the time about passing the baton, knowing that we are at a time limit, whether it's the 2 years that we have or whether we agree to go another up to 6 months. At some point, we have to pass this baton along to others. And so to start off with a preamble that will set the stage for the final report, follow that up with a section that presents and discusses the proposals that we do have approved. Every now and then we get a recommendation that we have actually acted on prior to the final report. And so that might be a good space and time to actually go in depth about those proposals that we have voted on, whether they were successful or not, what we brought forth to our elected bodies. A section where we can do very much what we just did a few minutes ago and talk and get the roundtables to outline the overall work, and a suggestion that that's done with a common template, making it easier for those who are putting this report together to make it actionable and to give us guidance into how to write that report. I know that criminal justice system is working on a template for theirs, and maybe they want to share it with us that we can look over it as well. That would be great. A list of proposals and recommendations that aren't as large as the full-blown recommendations that we've been making so far, that we can list and present in bullet points. Again, these could be recommendations, these can be observations, just another way to be a little more comprehensive, so that we can't solve every problem. We may not even see every problem, but we want to acknowledge those things that we can. And so there will be a larger section about the proposals in a bullet point section as well. A discussion also, there's been all of us have had some very important and important conversations with our community, with those who are working for our community and the practitioners, and how some of those conversations have already brought about change long before we even finish our work. So this is a suggested outline, followed by conclusion. And here's the main thing right here, an additional suggestion that we create an ad hoc committee with the co-chairs and one member from each of the 5 roundtables to work along with Dr. Dwayne Campbell and the research assistants to put this thing together. So that's one suggestion. I'm open. This is a living document. It's just a Word document here, so I can we can make any other suggestions. We didn't put a lot of time on this, but we want to just kind of start the conversation here that we can pass on to what we hope will be an ad hoc committee. Jesse.
This is helpful. I think one gut reaction is rooted in what Manju had shared earlier, and you alluded to it around the potential extending of our task force. And I think I was trying to recall exactly like the current intended end, because I'm not sure if we all have the same date in mind, especially given different appointments. And so I'm just wondering if anyone is clear on that, just for a point of record. That'd be helpful.
Yes, sir.
I think that's also helping me kind of think through like the pacing.
Yes, sir.
April
We started
28th, we got.
Yeah, we started at the end of April, so it would be the end of April 2023.
What is time? My.
But Jesse, I think, when we were having the discussion that Manju was leading us on, seems many months ago, about when we wanted to try to bring things together in the form of some at least evolving draft report so we could have our community outreach effort going on. That date of trying to wrap things up and put it in a form that could be shared was more like this month or next month, so that March could be spent on all the cool ways to get the community engaged. Now, of course, if we could, and of course we can ask for 6 months, but the city, the county, the school board has to give it to us. That would then allow us a lot more breathing room to be able to have more time to get community support behind whatever it is we present. But if we stuck to that original time frame, it's more like, a month or so from now, we'd need to have final reports done so that we would then have time to get it out to the community before it gets handed off to the 3 governing bodies. That's my recollection.
Javier.
Thank you, and good evening and Happy New Year, everyone. I just wanted to say that, this is just so folks know any recommendations that come with money, right? And I know y'all aren't going to say, this is the dollar amount we think. I don't think anyone's expecting that, right? But even with the timeline that you're on, I mean, this is basically me saying, if you need more time, it might be beneficial to do it. In my mind, if you do the thing and then you do community outreach and stuff, you're going to miss everyone's budget cycle.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to miss school boards, you're going to miss ours, you're going to miss county commissioners. So if, and I know you all have to ask for permission, but we have other examples of, I think both the Confederate Monument and the Race Equity Task Force ended up having to ask for more time. I'm almost positive. I know Race Equity did, and I'm almost positive that the Confederate Monument one did too. I don't think that's going to be like a shocker for those of us who would have to say yes. And it may set you up to have the community conversations in the fall with real clear alignment for what to ask for that's aligned to budgets. Right now, I'm concerned that your timeline isn't going to align to budgets.
That's a very real concern.
And I will say, just from my, we start talking, I mean, our department requests get submitted in December. Councils are due this Friday. That doesn't mean things don't change. I'm not saying that, you know, there have been some last minute, we've had to make some last minute allocations to affordable housing projects that weren't going to go through if we didn't throw some money at them. Our eviction diversion attorneys were funded very much at the last minute, but that was for like $200,000, right? Like they were for smaller amounts that it's easy for our budget to kind of like find. So I just want to name that so that y'all can wrap your heads around some of that moving forward. And I will say that the city is, I don't know about the county and the school board, but the city, we will have some hard conversations around resources this year. I don't think our budget process is going to be easy.
Thank you.
That doesn't mean not to do things. I'm just being real with y'all.
No, that's helpful. I think it just feels important I try to begin with the end in mind, and it doesn't make sense to be talking through this template and not have a clear sort of runway for like, how do we get there and what steps do we need to take to get there sustainably? So, yeah, I don't know if it will be appropriate either in this meeting or next meeting so that folks have time to kind of fully wrap their heads around emotion. But it feels like if we want to complete this work, we need at least an additional 3 months, if not the full 6 months. You know, I'd hold space for, you know, asking for the 6 months, but then still aiming for something a little sooner. I think in my mind, I'd had June or July as like July 1 was kind of like my runway. So I could see it going a little bit past that, but yeah, I'm just holding space for that. So I want to make sure that everyone that's still active on the task force, I know we've had some people who have stepped down, don't feel caught off guard. One thing that I appreciate is that we've often voted unanimously, if not always unanimously, because I think there's a way in which we try to make sure we're including everyone in our processes. So I'm just holding space for that. That's kind of my gut reaction at this moment in terms of the template and how we construct it, but also how we actually end up using it.
And Javier and Jillian, do you think, in your opinion, what's likely to get us more of a full reception? Trying to present this to folk in April, or waiting until 6 months from then? Because it wouldn't be 6 months from now; it'd be 6 months extension from April. Where do you think is likely to have more bandwidth and more budget breathing room and et cetera? It sounds like from what you're saying, it would be 6 months from April, not April. Assuming that we were allowed to continue, we'd fare better if we had that extra time.
I think, and I want to, Jillian got here just a little while ago, so I want to give her the time to respond. So maybe you should go because I already said my bit.
Yeah, sorry I was late, y'all. So I missed the first part of this conversation, but my initial thought is April is like right in the middle of budget season, and there's a lot of stuff going on in general, and I think that there would be more opportunity to pay attention to what you're saying and take it seriously, and it not get like caught up in the general shuffle of everything if it was the fall. And I don't anticipate a problem with an extension. I've been wrong before, but I don't think that's a hill anyone's gonna die on.
Can I ask a clarifying question real quick for
Please.
folks? Is the intent, so I see the template. I know that everyone's working on proposals within their own roundtables that then you are going to build. With the outreach piece, is the outreach piece that you're going to build the proposal and then have folks react to it?
Absolutely.
Is that okay?
Absolutely.
And you want that reaction so that it'll inform any edits you have to make?
Absolutely. Member check-ins.
Okay, I
making
just want to
that-
make
well,
sure I'm,
Yes.
yep. So
Yeah.
in my mind, when I hear that, especially because you want to incorporate edits, which I think is absolutely correct, everything takes longer than you think it's going to. We all know that. And so I don't want y'all to rush if you think you're going to be, I think it's going to land on the elected's laps better because everyone's going to be, I think probably county schools and all of us are going to have hard budgets. We're going to have to make some tough decisions this spring. And so I would hate for everyone's work and the importance of this work to kind of be,
Absolutely.
And I would hate for you all to rush it and not really hear community in the way you all want to get it to us, and then it not be, the kind of impactful thing that I think folks are really anticipating and wanting for.
Thank you so much for that input. Manju?
I wondered if it's the sense from our city council members that we would have the votes on council to carry the full $1 million that have been committed to the task force into, like, whether it would carry over into the 23-24 budget. Such
Y'all
that we-
didn't use your money, right? You haven't used it
Not
all.
yet.
Yeah. It only won't if someone makes an attempt to claw it back. And if someone were to claw it back, then I think it would pass, but they would have to proactively claw it back. Otherwise it continues.
I do think that those funds could be really valuable for the kinds of grassroots outreach around the proposal that we'd like to do to make sure that there's buy-in for the ideas that we're.
Yeah, the way it is it's there unless somebody says it's not there.
Great.
And that, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I mean, I would be pretty loud and whatever about it.
I mean, obviously we would not support that, but it could still happen.
I'd love to hear from some more members on the subject of extending. I think it's really important to talk this out now, whether we vote on it today or not. We know we have some members who are not here. But I'd like to hear some more opinions.
I would be fine with an extension.
Alejandra says she would too in the chat. Muffin says no problem.
Yeah, I think what would be helpful before putting it to a vote, I'd love for us to have a timeline. And if within the next month, we could share that. And so we'd have a clear, we're extending it and here's the plan, so that's not just, oh, we have another 6 months, but it's very clear. I think Manju said this well, we're not trying to do more. We're just trying to give ourselves more room to do what we've already said yes to. And I would feel good about that. I think I'm mindful. I think the one reason why I'd be less excited about putting it to a vote right now is just because it's not on the agenda, and I want to make sure that we give space for the second reading, and it doesn't feel like it's that much of an urgent matter. But if others felt strongly, we could make that vote, but I'd feel better about a vote if we would have a clear timeline that everyone's feeling good about, so that when we make that vote, it's very clear how we're moving forward with that new date in mind. And I'm seeing in the chat too, you put October 28th. So yeah, I guess like that would be like the longest part of the runway.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to, if there's imagination and enough energy, like I'd love to finish, you know, in the summer, if that feels realistic. It may not, but again, I want to hold space for that kind of conversation before having a vote. That's just my 2
Absolutely.
cents.
Thank you. Yeah, so I did want to kind of summarize this and move forward. I want to give space for anyone else who hadn't had a chance to express their opinion.
I'd just like to add that we also need to check in with our RAs and see, you know, how that might integrate. I love the timeline idea. So that can be research ends, community activism and advocacy starts. That's great. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Xavier, is this a time to give feedback on the template you offered, or is that for a future discussion?
That would be for future discussion until I want to kind of get this point done, and then we can see if there's any more feedback on that. We're actually over time on that item, but we did only schedule an hour meeting, so we still have some cushion. Any other feedback on considering this a first reading so that we could vote on up or down on an extension for the next meeting for February? That's my summary, that we are suggesting that we consider this discussion a first reading of a vote. And this is one of the few votes that's actually in the bylaws that says we have to have a 2/3 vote to extend, and it doesn't say up to 6 months, it says add 6 months. Well, we can end it when it ends. So we would be voting to add 6 months with the understanding that when we finish, we finish. And that 6 month would be through October 28th.
And Manju, I think I heard you correctly at the outset that you and other members of your roundtable have already been working on that. So you've already got a proposal in the works, and you could add Jesse's suggestion for a timeline, and then could you share that with all of us in time before the next month's meeting? So then we would have that to vote on, discuss, adjust, and vote on in February. Does that sound right? So we don't have to start from scratch or recruit folks. You've already done it or are doing it, right?
Full transparency, we've not been like plotting out a timeline.
No, I didn't mean that.
Would look like, but we've been talking about needing those extra 6 months or up to 6 months. I think up to is a helpful way to think about it. Just to be sure that we're doing things in a way that's in accordance with our equitable engagement principles.
But just practically, you've already started the work. I'd be happy with you guys to finish it with adding the timeline that Jesse and Marcia talked about, and then sharing that with all of us.
Yeah, I think
When
we
is your
would
next
work with the
meeting, Marjorie?
co-chairs so that it's like reflecting.
When is
what-
your next meeting?
Our next meeting is in 2 weeks.
Okay.
We've switched to
That
an
sounds
every
good.
2 week schedule instead of once a week.
That sounds good. Oh, I had another point. I'm sorry. I can't think of it. So I'm fine with, I know my other point was giving us, having a second reading and vote in the February meeting. We'll give the co-chairs a chance to actually talk some more with our liaisons, particularly those who are not here, and, you know, get some of their advice as well. Alec, I saw you came off mute.
I did. I'm sorry that I haven't been so present, y'all. I'm at my daughter's swim meet, but and so I don't want to derail the conversation, but it sounds like there's a conversation about extending the work, and that we're not going to put that to vote tonight. But I'm curious about and thinking about my life, a vote to extend it but is also like that I support that work, but also having a real conversation with around how I can participate in that work. So I feel like I don't know if y'all are understanding what I'm saying. Does that make sense?
Most definitely.
Yeah. So sorry to be that guy, but I do need to, I want to make sure the work gets done properly, and I want to show up. And that's becoming increasingly harder for me.
And not just you, Alec. I think one of the reasons that I was trying to move this forward is because for many of us, this has been a stretch. Just being realistic and just kind of reading the fatigue that I'm seeing was one of the reasons I was trying to keep it within the 2 years. But there are very, very good reasons to continue past those 2 years. And
Absolutely.
we'll have to see how it plays out. But we want to really look into it over the next month and really dig deep into this for our second reading in February.
Yeah. Thanks for understanding.
Absolutely. Having said that, should we just table the final report? Just outline? Oh, what's your pleasure?
I think, I don't know if we need to I don't feel like the template is something that we need to vote on. I think it's a helpful tool. I think it'd be helpful if you sent out the template, so that we could continue to look at it. I mean, for my gut reaction is that it's helpful. And I think the ad hoc folks will be able to use it well, into actually completing the report. So I feel pretty good about it. I think my main feedback was around the timeline of using it.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely wasn't presenting it for a vote. I was just trying to get feedback, and my purpose was, my hope was to take whatever we have right now and pass it on to an ad hoc committee.
Mm-hmm.
So
that sounds good.
So everybody decide who would like to be on that ad
well,
hoc
we would need
committee.
each roundtable to
right.
nominate someone
That's
to be on
right.
that ad hoc committee.
That's
basically.
right. Yeah.
And it would be great if we could get that done within a week,
Mm-hmm.
if
Beautiful.
possible. So that you may have to do some emailing between your people. Some of you are going to meet within the next week or two, but it's the sooner the better.
Cool.
So we'll take that. I'll make sure I email out what I put together so that everyone has access to it, as Jesse's asked. All hearts, minds clear. We can move on to our next agenda item. That was a hearty discussion and a necessary one. Thank you for all the wonderful feedback. We'll turn over now to Dr. Boone to talk about the second reading for our vote on a violence and de-escalation ethno-drama recommendation. Do you have that to share, Wanda? I didn't have a chance to pull it up. I had printed it out and I didn't think to pull it up, but I can get to it if I need to.
We'll see who can get to it first.
You got it.
Sorry, I was expecting it to be up too, so. Just one moment.
Mike got us. Thank you, sir.
Oh, somebody has it?
Yeah, Mike.
I just pulled it up in Dwayne's email, so. I got it.
Okay, okay,
Thank you.
good. Thank you so much. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're calling this Building Resilient Communities. And it's a city-county proposal. The agencies and organizations to make this successful are members of Districts 1 and 4, residents and residents councils in public housing within those two districts. We've already spoken to them. We already have that support. We've held conversations with residents. Crystal Taylor, who will be the director for the ethno-dramas, is the nonprofit director of Black August in the Park and Black Farmers Market and Beats and Bars. And Tri-Coalition members Tri-Coalition as well as other CBOs already have community health workers within their employ. And so I already said that we talked to those people. So the other agency is DART, which is the Durham ACEs Resilience Task Force. which is a possible place for the ACEs work of this to reside. The full estimate cost is down from what it was before to $66,000, and you see the breakdown. The ownership of the production is something that would have to be worked out. Now, expected reach of 800,000, that's because of social media and that kind of thing. But 300 people a month, 1,200 people in a year. I based this actually on the ethnodrama that was done at Hayti Heritage Center, put on by NCCU. That was a production that's called Kites. The other part of this is that it's now on video and it can be shown in many platforms. In addition to the ethnodrama, NC Care 360 is a platform that's used by CBOs that provides services to individuals that need them, can be used in order to make sure that people have their needs met outside of this process. And you can go keep scrolling. So the ethnodrama depicts the journey of families and communities struggling with trauma, but also violence. These are, I don't know whether you've been able to look at the videos or whether you were able to attend Kites, but it's done in a very respectful way. There's some parts of it that are funny. There's some parts of the ethnodramas that are, yes, Northeast Central Durham is there. And so the community activities, because we want the community to be involved in resilient type activities. Resilience doesn't mean that someone always has to go for counseling. If they do, then that can be a referral. However, there's so many people that recover from trauma that involve themselves in those things that can be made available that they would like to do. And some of the things that we heard from the community are movies, lawn dances, cookouts, quilt making, murals, music, concerts, etc. And so these ethnodramas will take place within communities, certain census tracts, the high socially vulnerable census tracts in Durham. And again, NC Care 360 will allow that handoff if someone identifies that they have other needs that need to be met that can be met. So that's like a wraparound system of support. You can go ahead to rationale. And so residents living in vulnerable communities, and really when we talk about ACEs, everyone can benefit. So the ethnodramas will be open to all, but specifically they will be shown in these vulnerable areas. It would be helpful for just about everyone, and it targets the roots of violence and health disparities in Durham. So we're, so that's good, you're good. And so this depicts the lasting effects that ACEs can have on behavioral health. If someone has 4 or more ACEs, then they're more susceptible to poor outcomes, such as severe obesity, diabetes, depression, suicide attempts, STDs, heart disease, cancer, stroke, COPD, broken bones, lack of physical activity, smoking, alcoholism, drug use, missed work, and violence is a part of that, which I'll show you. Yes, ACEs is adverse childhood experiences. Thank you. If someone has 6 or more, then it's possible that they can have 20 years less life expectancy. When we think about the most vulnerable areas in Durham, there's so many reasons that individuals suffer, but there's a stark contrast between those areas in districts 1 and 4 than the other districts in Durham. Mainly, there are people that are dying before the age of 70, 65 in some of these areas. And it may not be due to violence, but it is due to ACEs. So even though we're talking about violence in these ethnodramas, the fact that we are also talking about ACEs can assist in the other areas that are needful. So different forms of violence, we can see that if a child experiences maltreatment, which that's what ACEs are, before the age of 18, then you can see the trajectory and how that can move along from childhood and then experiencing or different forms of violence later on. You can go ahead. Okay, so this is just some of the research that was done by Dr. Livingston at NCCU. He's the professor of psychology there, and just, other folks that have been involved in the process. You can go next. So specifically, we're looking at Cornwallis, Hoover Road, McDougall Terrace, Oxford Manor as the geographic areas, but we can include others. Those are just the ones that we talked about. And pretty much that's what we have talked about. A toolkit will be developed that will be something that people can leave with strategies for self-care and that kind of thing. And you can go ahead. So, and I already talked about NC Care 360. The intervention would be assessed through qualitative interviews and surveys, pre and post tests. And the mechanism for oversight would be where this resides, monitoring the effects and changes after the viewings, staying accountable. And because they're embedded in the community, I think that this is an important factor because so often, for example, in research, and I love research, but when research is done, sometimes there's nothing to reside in the community. And so when the research is done, then things kind of go away. But when you have something that's embedded in the community with the CBOs and community health workers that are there now and will continue to be working in these areas, not only can we monitor what's happening, but also there's some sustainability involved. And you can go on. I think that is pretty much it. And as I said, the budget is $66,000 total. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Boone. This is our second reading for this proposal. Any discussion? Questions?
I see a hand up.
Yeah, Mike?
So Wanda, the questions are more about the specifics of this particular proposal, and I would love to hear, from Jillian and Javiera, who would be, amongst the people voting on actually implementing this. So not about the general principle of ACEs and its effect and the general potential impact of an ethnodrama, but this specific proposal. One of the biggest things that's changed from the original was the detail that you included about all the follow-on, the potential connection to service. You've mentioned a number of existing partners who can do it. You mention it, but they're not really articulated in the proposal with as much, maybe enough detail, but an elected official could tell us if a city or a county manager would look at that and say, I need to see a lot more about what's the contract going to be between NC Cares 360 and these existing community-based health workers to actually implement it, and do they have their own already existing systems of assessment to gauge the effectiveness of the connections to services that they provide. Your assessment mechanism is about the potential impact of the ethnodrama itself, but even in this proposal, it seems like that is step one of 3 steps that are key to the overall process. So the proposal itself has goal 1, objective 1, and there used to be in the original version goal 2, goal 3, et cetera, and those aren't in there anymore. So And then again, maybe Javier and Jillian can say whether they think that's sufficient detail about what goes beyond the ethnodrama, and if all of those other critical parts of this are already budgeted and paid for, that if you can accomplish the follow-on services, if you can accomplish the 300 plus interviews you plan to do, absent additional funding, since the budget is only to produce the film, not to then show it and to have the follow-on activities.
Yeah, I think that the reason that I didn't put more information about NC Care 360 is because I don't want to speak for our city council persons. But in working with the COVID response, the CBOs that had community health workers used NC Care 360 on a daily basis. And they are organizations that are currently providing those external social determinants of health challenges. They're meeting those needs. And so they would not need funding from this particular proposal. There are other funding mechanisms for them.
And,
Within
and NC Care 360 can provide the entirety of the funding needed for all these community-based health workers that would be involved.
No, not NC Care 360. That's the platform that's used to identify and meet the need and the services that CBOs provide. I'm saying that CBOs that are part of this proposal have funding on their own in order to meet those needs, which is why they're not here listed here.
Got it. And your organization, will it be a sort of through source, or in other words, is the only budgeted item is the money for the film, which goes entirely through Crystal's organization? Is that correct?
That's correct.
So what the effort that the involvement of TRI is already can be accomplished through the resources that TRI already has, your organization already has?
Yes, that's correct.
Got it.
Are the community health workers, are the budgets for those folks, since they do seem to be critical to the success of this, where is that funding coming from, and is that funding secure for the community health workers?
Mm-hmm. So for example, apart from this project, our organizations, and I'm just saying how this works for other organizations, and there are actually 4 organizations that would be working on this together. So TRI has several grants. We have 7 community health workers that are a part of those grants. And they are the ones whose salaries are included in TRI's budget. Because we use community health workers and they are a benefit to all the services that we provide, then sustainability means that we have the funds in order to keep that going. Now, indefinitely is anything indefinite, but we do have the funding in order to support this proposal. And this is a pilot. So,
yeah. So it looks like a 2-year pilot to me. So there's funding for community health workers beyond that.
Definitely that, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks.
I think, Mike, you had a question for city council members? Or do you not have that anymore?
Well, I just would, it was sort of the hard-nosed practical question of the likely reception, the proposal in its, not the general principle, but in this specific proposal with the details included in it, what the likelihood that they think that the city manager, the county manager, the city council, the county commission will give it the fair hearing it deserves, or if it would get, kicked back for want of more detail. And if so, why we want to have that detail in on the front end versus the back end.
Thanks, Mike. That's ultimately a question for staff. when they want more detail, they ask the grantee, for lack of a better word. We don't, you know, they have to understand the compliance that they need to meet, depending on where the source of the money is. If it's city money, it's different than like federal money, right? But like with ARPA funds, there's a whole list of requirements that comes from the feds. And it's staff who are vetting to make sure that we are meeting those requirements. And then staff vets things and ultimately it makes its way to us. I don't know if that's helpful, if I'm answering the question or not.
Well, I guess I would, and sort of the spirit of the question, perhaps it's not one you care to predict on, is the likelihood
Nope.
that this would get a positive response. So if we could anticipate that to make it as strong as possible, so it didn't just get kicked back or not even make its way out of a city manager or county manager's office.
I think that, you know, there would be, at least on the city council side, this is a lot around kind of mental health, right? I mean, that's what I'm interpreting it as. And so my honest opinion would be, I could see, and it's certainly a question I would say as a city council member is like, well, is this more in the wheelhouse of county commission versus city council? And so that's something that I know staff would also think about, right? Is who tends to fund what? So and one of the questions I have is it may not even be something I have to decide upon, because it may be something that is not funded through the city, it's funded through the county. And that's not saying one thing or another. I'm just saying that that's often the conversations we do have, is who is the best funder based on the work that they already do.
Yeah,
And
I
Wanda,
was gonna say,
Wanda, you were presuming this would come from the task force's budgeted line. And we want to
Okay,
present this
thank
to
you, that.
city, is that true? We want to present this as all our proposals to the city, the county, the school board at the same time, and they can decide amongst themselves who should take it on. Is that a correct interpretation?
Yes, that's
Got
correct.
it.
the task force's budget line is just in the city.
Right.
But what I was going to say was the thing that Javier said about staff approval, that's a really important part of the process, but definitely not sufficient. And yeah, the part that I do not feel at all capable of, predicting one way or the other is the city council reception. Unfortunately, I think it depends on a lot of factors that I'm just not, I have no idea. I don't know. But getting a positive review from Wanda is definitely a step in the right direction.
Wanda, city manager, Wanda, sorry.
Yes, sorry. City manager. Wanda
Uh,
Boone has definitely reviewed it. Yeah, city manager Wanda Payne.
I would like to add also, I'm sorry, go ahead, Javier.
And I was going to say, just like the prescriptions for repair, there was a no, then people worked on it, and then there was a yes. So even if you get a no, that doesn't mean it's permanent, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would
So,
definitely say, Dr. Boone especially, and Mike, the job of this task force is to make the strongest recommendation it can.
Mhm.
Then it's up to Marsha and I to deliver the result. And so that means that we have to have the conversations with staff members, with elected officials. And it does sometimes mean go back and change this, go back and try this, go back and try this. That's the sausage being made. And so Mike, I'm saying we got the sausage part. So your part is just coming up with the ingredients, and we'll see what we do. I don't want you to worry about that as a task force member. As frustrating as it could easily be. But if this is something that you as a task force want to move forward, then it falls on the co-chair's shoulders to find the best way, whether it's one group, two groups, we've seen it, we've seen it all now. And so that's where we're living.
But by that logic, then Xavier, would seem that this was a proposal, if it gets approved, that we don't want to just wait and include as part of a total final report package, because then there is no time for backing and forthing. It's the handoff by our now potentially extended deadline, and there would be no chance for revision, or at least less likely, because you and Marsha and our tenure would be over. So that would argue for making this its own proposal. And yet I thought the guidance that you guys had taken from the city council was don't do that. We don't want to see individual proposals. We want them only as part of a total package, so that it would seem wise to make this proposal as airtight as it can be
Yes, sir.
as part of a final report.
I totally understand that perspective. I did not take that as a suggestion from the entire council, so I'm going to move forward with this, if that makes sense. And yeah. Marcia, are you okay with that?
Also, just
Absolutely.
if folks need to move this conversation, happy to sit down with folks just with as with prescriptions for repair and have a more robust conversation so that we don't have to, stay in this whole big space. Happy to do that for anyone who needs to do that, if that's helpful.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Are there
I
any
can-
other questions from task force members?
My question, thank you, Xavier. My question was a general one. I felt like at the first reading, one of the points of, I won't say tension, but just observation feedback was around sort of like, what's the actual intervention and how is it being measured? And it feels like this is a lot clearer about like what will be measured. And I think I wanted to ask Bray sort of simply and succinctly, like for our city council members, like, does this feel better than what was presented before in the sense of any revisions that were made? Like, does it feel like a stronger proposal, or are there gaps that like filled?
It's hard for me to answer that question because I thought the prescriptions for repair proposal was good when it came to us the first time. So like I didn't see any gaps. I think that it's going to depend more, unfortunately, on on politics than on merit. And that's just kind of the space that we're in. It's like,
I get what you mean.
Yeah.
I guess
so it's just hard to predict where people are going to draw their lines and make their allegiances.
That is true. I would agree with that.
Pardon my interjection. I'm not asking you to speak on behalf of the entire council in a way that you can't. I think I'm asking you to use your best judgment in terms of like, has the round table that worked on this, like from your vantage point, like done a sufficient job to see this forward? Like, and if so, then okay, then that's helpful for me. Because it felt like previously there were some bigger question marks. There were some bigger kind of tension points potentially around.
Yeah.
So, and it sounds like in the second reading, those have been addressed. I felt that looking at it, but I wanted to hear that from you all in a more formal way.
Yes, I think the revision is much stronger. I think that I think it's ready to go to council and I would support it at council. But I would have said that about the first proposal. That's what I'm worried about, about the prescriptions for repair proposal that had a lot of comments.
We're not the folks you need to get
there,
is what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
No,
Sorry, I'm just being really candid.
No,
I'm like,
and
you're going to get a lot more grace from the two folks that you've got on the Zoom right now than you may get from other council members. And I don't want to speak for them. And I never know. You can put your finger in the air and try and figure it out sometimes. Maybe it'll be great. Maybe it won't. I don't want to offer something up and be like, because I feel like
I'm not asking you to speak on their behalf,
right?
And to be candid.
And I don't want y'all to relive the same thing. That's actually my bigger concern, right? I know that it was a lot of work and effort and a lot of, there was emotions associated with it and whatever, which is why I offered up, like, maybe this makes sense to take into an off, like not in the full Zoom, and let's sit down and make sure that whatever does move forward is real solid. And tee up for folks if needed, help you all, you learned some lessons. We all learned some lessons. Maybe I need to rephrase that. Having sit downs with council members before it shows up at a work session, right? Like there's a lot of strategy that could happen that I
Yeah.
don't think needs to happen in the full Zoom. And I'm happy to help with that.
Thank you for offering that. You've answered my question, and then some.
Yeah,
And
I feel great about this proposal right now. I think it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thanks, Wanda and Samuel, in your absence, and everyone that I know this took a lot of effort. And I appreciate seeing some of the revisions, and it feels like it's a bit more, I won't say consolidated, but like focused. Not to say that it was unfocused before, but you've like focused it even more, which validates the reduction in the budget.
Thank you. You're right. And it was consolidated. And we took a lot of care and attention to go step by step to make sure that what was asked for and needed was in this second proposal and now the second reading.
Manju.
I was just wondering in what regard this is a pilot, like if you could say more about the kind of what are we testing here and what would happen next if a pilot was approved? Like kind of what is it building towards?
It would be building towards more of the same, to continue to move this around to other areas in districts 1 and 4.
As in the same play or the same, the model of using ethnodrama around ACEs, or the idea of using ethnodrama around all kinds of public health issues? Or can you just say a little bit more for me?
Well, for me, because I see the expanse of the benefit of ACEs. NCCU was already planning to do some ethnodramas around other health disparities and concerns. They've already done the opioid epidemic and, some other things. So I would foresee that this process would fit into what they're already doing, right? So, but this is to specifically pilot the most vulnerable communities, to target the most vulnerable communities in Durham rather than the general population, and to see what impact that has. Based on that impact, I think it would even inform what NCC is doing, which would provide sustainability for this process.
And I'm going to get to Mike's question too, but I just wanted to follow up on Manju's question. We are talking about a film, are we not?
Yes.
And of course, a film is lasting.
Yes.
A live play is a moment in time,
Right.
a powerful moment, but when it's gone, it's gone.
Right.
I'm someone who produces plays. And what I'm so grateful for is that one of those plays was filmed, and now my music can live on in eternity, right? That's the sustainability behind this project. And just want to interject also my bias as an arts educator who just received today in the mail a book from a former student. He wrote a book about his life, and he signed it in the front and talked about just the impact that being in the arts had on him. And he was my student 20 something years ago, So when you put something in a film format like this, the pilot may be what starts it, but that film and what it sets and starts is like dominoes. It's like if somebody else picks it up. And so I just see great long-term sustainability in this project, and I'm very, very excited about it, to be honest. Did you have more questions, Manju, before we go to Mike? Okay, thank you. Mike.
I did another point that I think, that I think needs clarification is the timeline on it, the content of the timeline. There's one sort of timeline item, and really actually most of the rest of the content of that timeline section of the template is rationale. It's not a timeline for the pilot, it's rationale about why why it's worth doing. Listen to the community, don't start something new. All very relevant rationales, but not really timelines. So I, again, would be more comfortable if there was a clear timeline of how the pilot will progress and when it will launch. You mentioned, 6 months planning, but then, about how long will the screenings happen, and then what as a pilot, and then to assess and go beyond there. And it would help me in the context to know what other proposals the VIDE thinks you might be presenting, either bullet points or full-on proposals on the larger topic of violence intervention and de-escalation, to see how this one fits in with other, maybe more direct, even more directly focused potential interventions to prevent gun violence, et cetera, for instance. Especially now, if you think we may have more time to work on those, how this proposal might fit in that general context of what you're planning to develop more.
The one thing that we're working on and have been actually since before this is Handle with Care. I mentioned that early on. So those, I understand what you're reading about those things. I mean, for some reason, in the last proposal, somebody wanted to know what folks were saying about XYZ. And so that's what's there. It's just information that had to do with comments that came from here, there, and everywhere. So it would be a 6-month process to develop the film, and then film, and then after that, that is when it would be implemented. So if the question is how long is implementation, then I mentioned that we would reach 1,200 people with 300 people in each quarter. So that's a year. Does that answer your question?
I think so, but again, you verbalize it to my reading more clearly than it's written. You've explained it right now more clearly than that I saw as a reader reading it, but that may just be me.
I think there's another hand up.
I'm sorry, I was looking through the proposal.
Where'd it go? It went away.
Jennifer.
Yeah, oh, there she is.
Sorry, I thought I was unmuted and was like, hey guys, super briefly, because I saw Dwayne's time check in the chat. I just wanted to add something. I know, Dr. Boone, that you already know this is well in your wheelhouse, but for everyone else who might be collaborating, coordinating on supporting the project, I wanted to just make the observation that much to my chagrin, I have been up to my neck in data and studies about school-based substance use prevention, which is there be dragons, y'all. It's a really rough world out there. And the stuff that we know actually works is giving young people more adult mentors, involving family. So what's being proposed here, and yeah, Dr. Boone, I know you know this, but for everyone else, what's being proposed here hits all the boxes of substance use prevention in addition to everything else that we're talking about. So if we have any interested parties who are amenable to that kind of argument, is one that can be made very strongly with this proposal as well. So I just wanted to offer that to the group.
Are we ready for a motion?
We're moving to vote on the proposal.
Yes.
I move to vote on the proposal.
It's been moved by Dr. Jennifer Carroll to move this forward. This being a second reading, we don't need a second on that motion. Is there any further unreadiness before we move on?
So is the plan, if it's approved, is the plan to then present this to the city and the county at the next opportunity, or is this to be included in a final package of all of our reports?
With with the looming possibility of a 6 months extension, it is not my intention to wait until the final report. It is that we move it as expeditiously as we can.
And I appreciated you saying and county, Mike, because I did think that was a compelling argument that this is very well within the wheelhouse of the county's work, and I hope they would they would support it.
Yeah, the proposal does say city and county proposal. So that's what we've been given to work out.
Thank you.
Any further unreadiness? Okay, this being a hearing none, this being a actual proposal for recommendation, we have to get a 2/3 vote. So I will start with Alec.
Yeah, I approve.
Thank you. Isaac,
Yes.
thank you. Jatoya,
Yes.
thank you. Jennifer,
Yes.
thank you. Jesse,
Yes.
thank you. Manju,
Yes.
thank you. Marcia,
Yes.
thank you. Mike,
Yes.
thank you. Muffin, is she still with us? Okay. Shanice,
Yes.
thank you. Alejandra,
Yes.
thank you. Wanda,
Yes.
thank you. And I vote yes as well. That is a unanimous vote in favor of this recommendation. Congratulations to the hard work of our violence interruption and de-escalation roundtable. Thank you very much for all that hard work.
Thank you.
With that said, we are a minute over time. Not too bad. With some hearty discussion. If you didn't know it, I love you all. Appreciate everything you're doing. Marcia, close us out, please.
I love you too. It's going to be a great ride around the sun, y'all. I'm so glad to be on this planet with you and in this community. So love to all. Have a wonderful week, and we'll gather again next month.
Thank you, everyone.
Godspeed. Good night.